Hi guys, and welcome to my September wrap up. Today I'm going to be telling you about all the books that I managed to finish in September. I managed to read 13 books in September, which is definitely more than my average. I tend this year at least to have read about 6 to 8 books a month, so 13 is very good, although a few of them were definitely shorter reads. They were graphic novels or mangas, and then also some of them are for my classes, so required reading anyway. But yeah, let's just get straight into it. So the first book I finished in September was The Edible Woman by Margaret Atwood. This is the second book of Margaret Atwood's that I've ever read. I've also read The Handmaid's Tale. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. That may be a bit generous, probably more like a 3.5, but I did really enjoy it. I think that Margaret Atwood's writing style in this was incredible. It follows a woman named Marion who has begun to feel quite dissatisfied with her life. She's in her mid-30s and all of her friends around her have either got kids or are married or are wanting to, and she's kind of in a dead-end job and she's not got any prospects of a husband or children. At the beginning of the novel, she doesn't seem to care about getting either of these things. She's quite happy to be by herself and focus on her career, but as the novel progresses, you see these views shift. She meets a man named Peter and it kind of goes on from there. This is definitely a feminist novel in my opinion. It's about how women are pressured by society and the media to fit a certain stereotype and how easy it is to conform to that, but also how you can be both feminine and masculine. It talks about how you don't have to conform to a stereotype. Obviously Margaret Atwood writes great feminist literature, and I would highly recommend this one. The ending is very strange, it is quite ambiguous as well, so if you don't like those kind of things, maybe stay away from this, but I was quite satisfied with the ending. The next book I read on my Kindle, and it was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I was really nervous about reading this one, to be honest. I read Daisy Jones and the Six earlier on in this year and I really didn't enjoy it. I think I gave that a 2 star, but it's probably more like a 1.5 stars. So I've been putting this one off for a while, and I knew that there was a lot of hype surrounding The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but I'm so glad I read it. I just don't think Taylor Jenkins Reid, her writing style is not like my favourite. It's very slow and I don't know how to describe it, but it's just not my favourite. But I think no matter what, this story was just going to connect with me so much. It's about this old Hollywood movie star and she has had 7 husbands in her life and she's never really spoken out about them, and then she hires this reporter to basically tell all about her life so that the public finally know the truth. I didn't realise how strong the LGBT themes were in this, and that was something I definitely appreciated. And there's a lot of exploration of toxic relationships and kind of what makes people morally good and morally wrong. My favourite character in this by far was Harry Cameron. Honestly, he is pure goodness and he just made my heart so happy. And I really enjoyed Evelyn's character as well. I think that she was definitely flawed, but she was so open about those flaws, which is something I really appreciated. And as someone who is a film fanatic, I really like all the old Hollywood references. The next book I read was The Sky is Everywhere by Jandy Nelson, and I gave this 2.5 stars. I read this from the library on my phone as an ebook. I was quite disappointed with this book, if I'm honest. It's about this girl, I've completely forgotten her name, but Lenny. I don't remember what her actual name is. I just remember that one of the other characters calls her John Lennon, so we're going to call her Lennon just in case it's wrong. But her older sister dies from a heart attack and it's about her struggling with grief and who she is without her sister, because she's always kind of been in the shadows of her sister. There's a massive love triangle in this, so if you don't like that, I would stay clear, because pretty much the entire book is about grief and love triangle. Also, I think the reason I didn't enjoy this one as much as I was hoping was there was so much cheating going on, and I just, lack of communication. I really liked the love interest, one of them, not Toby, I can't remember his name, the other love interest, and I think that he deserved better. I would say that it hasn't aged very well. I know it's still quite a recent book, like in the last few years, but I think there are better books out there now. I've heard that her other book is a lot better, and I do still want to give that one a chance, but again, I think I need to lower my expectations for that one. The next book I read was Death Note Volume 1. This was a reread for me, and I gave this volume 4 stars. So it follows our main character, who's called Light Yagami, and he finds this Death Note from the Shinigami. And the Shinigami is a death god, and the Death Note is basically a notebook in which you can write someone's name and they will die. And he starts to kind of try and play the role of God, in that he thinks he can kill off all the criminals, all the bad people, and make the world purely good. And then it also follows this investigator named L, who's trying to track him down and stop him. This is like one of the first mangas I ever picked up, so it just has like sentimental value to me. Upon reread, I did notice some more troublesome themes. There's definitely sexism. I think that it really explores morality in a very interesting light. So yes, I would recommend, but just go into it knowing that some of the themes are a bit controversial. The next book I read was The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, and I gave this 3.5 stars. I read this as an ebook from my library, and again, it wasn't my favourite. There was nothing wrong with this one. I liked some of the themes that were explored. There was themes of LGBT, religion, race, gender, but it just wasn't, it didn't connect with me in the way I was hoping it would. It's written in verse, which I think was a clever choice for the novel, because Xiomara, she discovers her love of slam poetry throughout, and so you can tell as the novel progresses that the poems also get better, showing her development in skill. I felt like, because the way it was written, found it hard to connect to the characters. I would recommend it. It does have a lot of diversity, and I think I will definitely pick up more from Elizabeth Acevedo. I think I probably would prefer her books that are written like just a regular novel rather than in verse. I just don't think that verse novels are necessarily my favourite thing. Speaking of verse novels, the next book I read was Pukielira Is Not My Boyfriend by Stephen Herrick. It's about a school, and it deals with lots of different points of views from the children, as well as the constable that comes in and gives them safety talks. It's based in Australia. Basically, the premise of this book is what would happen if everyone was nice to people, and not just like everyday nice, like being pleasant, more about going out of your way to be super nice to people and do acts of kindness. I gave this book 3 stars. There was nothing wrong with it, just I wasn't the target audience for this book, but I can see the pros of this book. I also read Death Note Volume 2, and I gave this one 3 stars. I had more issues with this one than the first volume. This one definitely has a lot more sexism in it. The plot was way more intriguing in this one, so I felt conflicted, but I feel like it was too sexist for me to give it a higher rating. I then had an arc from NetGalley, which was Mooncakes by Suzanne Walker and Wendy Zhu. I gave this a 4 stars. It's a really cute Halloween-y graphic novel. It's about a non-binary werewolf and a witch and their relationship. They kind of start off as friends, but it develops more into a romantic relationship, and they're trying to stop this like demon force from killing the town. The art style in this was amazing. So the witch, she has a hearing aid, which is the first hearing aid representation I've ever read about, and I thought that was really cool to see. The next book I finished was 13 Little Blue Envelopes by Maureen Johnson. I gave this book 3 stars and I listened to it as an audiobook. This is the first audiobook I actually finished in a really long time, so yeah. I'm not a huge fan of audiobooks, but this month I've been listening to more just because I haven't had a lot of time to physically read for pleasure. I've been doing a lot of school books. This is a book about Ginny, whose aunt has died, and she always looks up to her aunt, and her aunt just kind of disappeared in the last few months of her life, and she never really explained why. And then Ginny gets a letter, and it's basically her aunt sends her away on this massive trip around Europe to try and learn more about why her aunt did certain things, but also so that she has just the summer of her life, basically. Because she has lost her aunt, she's looking for a way to kind of reconnect and understand why she did things that she did. And so she goes on this trip. I mean, it was published in 2005, I think, so it has been outdated now for a few years, but I enjoyed it. It was interesting to read. The audiobook narrator was okay. She did an alright job. I would say there are better books to pick up than this, but if you're looking for something with travel in it, it does have travel, and that is like a huge part of it. It does deal with grief, but it's not a dark book whatsoever. It's really quite lighthearted. However, a book that was very dark was Her Body and Other Stories by Carmen Maria Machado. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's what I'm going to go with. This is a short story collection about violence against women and women's bodies. I gave this a 2-star, maybe a bit generous, but when I read short story collections, I do like an average of my rating for each of the stories, and that's how I figure out what rating I'm going to give it. And so the average was a 2. If I was just rating it off of enjoyment, it'd probably be a 1.5. I've explained a lot about my feelings in this in my Contemporary-a-thon reading vlog, so if you want more detailed thoughts, definitely check that one out. I really only enjoyed one story, and that wasn't even a 5-star read. I think there are a lot of interesting themes that are explored. All the stories felt so similar. It was like I was just reading the same thing over and over again. There's a Law and Order story that I just had no clue what was going on. I think you definitely needed to have watched Law and Order to understand that story, and that story was the longest story in the entire book, so for me I felt quite disconnected from that story, and I gave it a 1 star. Her writing style was interesting, and I would potentially pick up something else she wrote in the future, but just not my favourite. Then I did another reread. I reread Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman, and I gave this a 5-star again. It's always going to get a 5-star. It's probably my favourite graphic novel I've ever read. Well, Heartstopper Volume 2, but we'll get to that. It's about Charlie and Nick, and Charlie is openly gay. He's probably one of the only openly gay kids at his school, and Nick is in the year above him, and he's always identified as straight. And then they kind of develop a friendship in this, and it makes Nick begin to question his sexuality. And there's a lot of discussion around homophobia and things like that within a school setting, which I think is quite important. The art style is just the cutest. I love Alice Oseman's writing style as well. She just has this way of making things seem so British, and I love it. And then after that I read Heartstopper Volume 2, which also gave 5 stars, and I think I loved it even more. It's just, you see the relationship developing in this novel, and there are some more LGBT characters introduced. We have a transgender character introduced. There's also a lot of racial diversity, which I really appreciate, and it's not a big deal. I hate it when books are diverse and they make such a big deal about it being diverse. I think it should just, like, books should just be diverse and it not be like a big thing. Which is exactly what Alice Oseman did in this one, which I really appreciated. And the final book I finished in September was I Was Born for This by Alice Oseman. I gave this 4.5 stars. This I also listened to as an audiobook, and the narrators were amazing. I would highly recommend this as an audiobook. So basically the premise of I Was Born for This is there's this massive band, and they're called The Ark, I think they're meant to be like a fictional world One Direction. There is a massive fangirl called Angel, and it's from Angel's point of view as well as Jimmy's point of view. Jimmy is one of the lead singers from the ARC, and it kind of deals with the themes of that fandom. There's a lot of really important themes in this book. It deals with depression and anxiety. It deals with a lot of LGBT themes. Jimmy is a transgender character. I really love how all of the characters, including the side characters, are so different and really fully fleshed out, and they're also important to the plot. Like, none of the side characters felt like they were just there for no reason. They were also crucial, which I really enjoy. I also love how fandom are kind of explored in that, so from the ARC's point of view, the fans are crazy and they begin to kind of resent them, particularly Rowan. He really resents the fan. Whereas Angel's point of view is that, yeah, there are extreme people who are fans, but that fandoms as a whole are really welcoming places, and that's where she's felt most accepted in her life. And as the book progresses, both characters get to see each other's point of view. Angel witnesses the attack on Rowan, and she understands that that is really extreme and like that can be terrifying to someone, but also the boys begin to understand that not all fans are like that, and like Angel is just willing to help them because she really appreciates what they did for her through their music. I'm so excited to read more by Alice Oseman. After reading this, I think that she's definitely just going to be an author. I know that her writing style is just something that meshes really well with me. That's all that I have read in September. I'm in the middle of a lot of other books as well at the moment, but they will be in my October wrap up because I have not finished them yet. I really hope you liked this video. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment down below if you've read any of the books that I read, and we can discuss our thoughts. And please let me know what your favourite book was that you read in September. Thanks, and I'll see you in my next video.